Wyoming is the best state to choose if you want to launder money. And in this video, I'm going to explain why and how you can buy a shelf company so you look like you've been in business for years and get it done all in under an hour. So let's get started. And remember, this is for educational purposes only, and it is not legal advice. So why Wyoming? I bet when you clicked on this video, you did not think that Wyoming would be the state I choose. If you watched any of my videos before, you know that the state of Delaware is known for being the #1 place people choose to incorporate their business. And yes, Delaware is great, but not for money launderers. Delaware is great for Fortune 500 companies and startups that want to attract venture capital money. It's great for those types of companies because Delaware has over 100 years of experience in issues like disputes between shareholders and management. That's great for companies like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and Apple. But if all you care about is moving money around, Delaware isn't the place. You want a state that doesn't ask for much information, doesn't require you to file unnecessary reports, and doesn't make you pay stupid yearly taxes. For example, Delaware companies have to pay corporate income tax, pay personal income tax, pay state franchise tax, comply with reporting requirements, and lastly, comply with regulations that essentially require the disclosure of substantial amounts of information. And the more information you have to disclose, the less privacy you're going to have. So if you know some stuff about incorporating a business, you may say, Jason, but what about Nevada? I heard they're a great state. And to that I say, not quite. See, Nevada does not share information with the IRS, which, as you can imagine, the IRS does not take too kindly to. Now, this has resulted in the IRS actually targeting people who have companies in Nevada. Wyoming does share information with the IRS, so they're not on what I call the bad list. But Wyoming only shares information that is given by companies who have real tangible assets in the state of Wyoming. So if you don't have any assets in Wyoming, and you likely won't, then the IRS gets nothing from Wyoming. The other reason people choose Nevada is lack of taxes. And that's just not completely true. Nevada does tax some corporations based on their gross income. Wyoming, though, has zero taxes for personal and corporations. And the last benefit that Wyoming has over other companies is there's no public listing of the names of the members or managers in an LLC. So you get the all-important privacy. Now, where Wyoming really shines is they have what's called a closed LLC and a closed corporation. Even if you're laundering money, you want to choose the company that gives you the least amount of trouble. Corporations, for example, are super formal. When you have meetings, they need to be documented. There has to be a board of directors and more and blah, blah, blah. A closed corporation, though, does away with all this. Because whether you're laundering money or not, for the most part, you don't need a board of directors. And with the closed corporation, you can choose not to have them. If you wanted the money laundering to be a family affair, then a closed LLC would be one for you. The only difference is that a closed LLC requires that before any shares are sold to an outsider, they must be offered to the other members first, and the members have to vote in favor of the sale. If these two conditions are not met, the sale cannot go through. This prevents outsiders from gaining control of the company and is great, especially when money laundering runs in the blood. Now that I've hopefully explained why Wyoming is the greatest state to use in a money laundering scheme, let's talk about how it's done. And to do that, I need to quickly talk about shell and shelf companies. A shell company is a company that does not own anything. The company exists only on paper. The best physical representation of a shell company is the classic scam where you have 3 shells and have to guess which shell has a ball under it. Kind of like this. See, you thought the ball was under the middle shell, but nope, it wasn't there. And that's precisely what a shell company is. You think the company has assets, but in reality, it owns nothing. It's just used as a pass-through vehicle, a way to move money around. You can create shell companies anywhere in the world. But in this video, we're actually going to focus on shelf companies, which is what this one website in Wyoming will sell to you. A good old Wyoming shelf company. See, a shelf company is a company that was formed in a state, all the proper documents were filed and registered, and then nothing happened with the company. It's like buying a pair of sneakers that you never wear and they just sit in your closet. They're in great shape, they're in the box, and even have the original receipt. And the sneaker resale market thrives off of this. Tons of sneakers bought years ago that are in what's called dead stock condition, which means they've never been worn, just sitting on the shelf waiting for someone to come and buy them. Now, before I go any further, I want to make it crystal clear that a shelf company is not illegal. It's perfectly fine to buy a company and let it sit there for a few months, even a few decades. The company, wyomingcompany.com, lists 5 reasons to buy a shelf company. I'm going to detail those and give them a rating. So the first reason to buy a shelf company, they say, is to save time. Now the argument is that buying a shelf company will let you get the documents within an hour and thus you can use it the same day. But sorry, this isn't a good enough reason. Many states allow for same-day registration of a company. Some, like Delaware, even allow for 2-hour processing. So this gets an F. The second reason is having the ability to bid on contracts. Now, some jurisdictions do require the company to be in business for a set amount of time before bidding on a contract. This is a barely legit reason to buy a shelf company. The idea behind having a time requirement on a company's existence is to be sure that people bidding on the contract actually have the experience and years to do the work. So while this was a legit reason, I'd still give it a C. The third reason is leasing equipment. Leasing companies don't like to lease to new companies that are less than 6 months old. Using a shelf company to get around the time requirement is shady and I'd argue somewhat criminal, but maybe not. Now, if the person buying the equipment though has the years of experience necessary and doesn't want to be hindered by starting a new company, then I understand why they would choose a shelf company. Overall, again, give this a C. Next is perception. This argument is kind of trash. Yes, having a company that's been around for a time can be helpful in showing prestige. However, it's not as important as some would have you think it is. I'd give this a D. And last is privacy. This is an argument to create a company in Wyoming, but not one to buy a shelf company. A new company created today in Wyoming versus a shelf company created 5 years ago doesn't change the level of privacy you have. I'd give this an F. Now, there's one additional benefit that's not expressly mentioned, and in my opinion, it's the biggest benefit, and that is credit. Buying a shelf company that's been in existence for a few years can help you get business credit much faster. Once you get true business credit, you won't have to be a personal guarantor on your business credit card. This is the strongest argument for getting a shelf company. Now, how to launder money using a shelf company? One way to use a shelf company to launder money is in the construction industry. Let's say you had a couple $1,000,000 and you wanted to clean the money in the construction industry, specifically through bidding on a government contract. Again, many governments will require the company to be in business for at least 6 months, sometimes longer. So your first step would be to buy a shelf company in a place like Wyoming. This shelf company would give you legitimacy. If necessary, you could create fake invoices showing past work completed. Then you bid on the contract with your shelf company, and if you paid the right people off, you can start moving your legal money through the shelf company. Overall, I'd say buying a shelf company doesn't make sense for like 90+% of all people. And if you're looking to launder money, having an age company can help, but honestly, the most important thing is privacy, and you don't need a shelf company to get that privacy. And some of the biggest users of shelf companies are hedge funds, which are one of the best ways to launder money. I'll show you why hedge funds and criminals are actually a match made in heaven right here in this video.